Hey guys, check it out. It's the most popular Jaguar they make. Yes, I'm of course talking about the Jaguar F-Pace in Eiger Gray. And in this video, we're gonna take it for a ride. We're gonna discuss, I hope, why Jaguar is struggling in this market. We're gonna talk about its competition, and we're gonna see if this might be the ride for you. So let's start, as we always start, with the external styling. For 2021, Jaguar has actually tweaked the styling of the new F-Pace, making it a little bit more contemporary, dare I say, a little bit more modern and not as stodgy. Because let's face it, Jaguar has been around for a long time and has, unfortunately, in America at least, developed a reputation as being the car for the successful Phoenix realtor. And that's not a great reputation if you're trying to sell a lot of cars. And Jaguar, unfortunately, right now is kind of lost in the woods. As you know, they've combined with Land Rover, so it's JLR. But Land Rovers are the ones that are really selling, whereas the Jaguars are struggling. And maybe by the end of this video, we can figure out why together. But let's talk about the car that's in front of us, which I think is a rather handsome car. I was actually at the launch of the F-Pace when it first came out, and immediately it became their best-selling car because everybody, of course, is buying crossovers and SUVs instead of sedans. So as you can see, it's kind of in that right space for a modern crossover. It competes with cars like the BMW X3, the Mercedes-Benz GLC. So it's not too big, it's not too small, it's in the Goldilocks space. And of course, it's very British. And one of the things that recently has been happening is we have gone to extremely large tires. Now, for a mid-size crossover rolling on 21s, that is a bold statement, because look at the amount of sidewall you have versus the amount of wheel. And one of the reasons for that is because modern design language makes it very hard to make a car look sexy, because, let me show you, come on with me. One way you can make a car look sleek is by having this dimension right here be as thin as possible. But because of pedestrian crash safety standards, nowadays the hood has to be up pretty high. So in order to make up for the fact that this is no longer as svelte or as thin as it used to be, the designers stuffed bigger wheels and tires, giving it that same appearance. So if you can't make this, if you have to make this bigger, then to make it proportionally more appropriate, you put on these big and fat and very double XL wheels and tires. The downside, of course, is the ride, because when you only have this much sidewall, it doesn't have a great ride. And we'll talk about the ride when we get to it. But under the hood is something really interesting, so let's pop that and let's take a look together. It's an inline straight six. Now that's not that interesting. As you know, recently all the Germans have gone to inline straight sixes, but this one, well, you can't see it, but hiding under this plastic cover is both a turbocharger and a supercharger. It's turbocharged and supercharged, putting out 335 horsepower and 357 pound-foot of torque, which seems very complicated to me. Once upon a time, if you wanted more power, you would just add more displacement. Now you add more complexity. All that super turbo goodness is paired to an 8-speed automatic, which in every F-Pace powers all 4 wheels. So this is an all-wheel drive vehicle, which is good for days like this in Colorado, where we're in the middle of May and we're going to go from rain to snow. Yeah, I know, it's a little bit weird. Let's take a look at, why don't you go on this side case, let's look at the inside. And let's start in the back first. See how much room there is for somebody who's a little bit taller. I do love this very well tailored interior in this kind of caramel color. It's a really nice place to spend time. It smells very British. So, have a seat. I'm sitting behind myself here. We've got this giant panoramic sunroof, and they've got 2 cup holders, independent climate controls, independent HVAC controls and vents, a Meridian surround sound system, and considering I'm 6'2", which is, on the taller side, I actually fit back here. So, if the driver were to move up their seat a little bit more, I think that'd be very comfortable. Seats are comfy, good leg room. It's a nice place to be. Let's see how much room there is in the back for all your stuff. And let's find out together if this car actually has a spare tire, because if it does, it's going to be massive. So pop open the back. Oh yeah, that is a lot of space. 40, 20, 40 split. And let's see what's under here. Oh, look at that. That is going to be one of the world's biggest run. Well, it's not it's a space saver, full size-ish spare, up to 50 miles per hour or 80 kilometers per hour, depending what part of the world you're in. But my God, is that thing huge. And I guess that's what you have to have when you're rolling on 21s. But in general, plenty of space back here. I suspect this would be very well appointed for somebody who's got, let's say, a small family or needs to bring maybe a mountain bike. You probably pop back those seats and throw a bike in here. And the exhausts are real. Look at that. Unlike the Germans, they actually have exhaust coming out the holes as opposed to coming out below the holes. So that's all good. So let's jump and take it for a ride. Now, of course, I do have the Negroni right here, and for over 300 horsepower, 22 mpg combined isn't bad. We're also looking at a MSRP of $39,000, but when you add in all the goodies, you're at $73,420, and the goodies are things like a lockable cooled glove box. Who would have thunk? We have a cooled glove box, a heads-up display, Eiger gray is an option, gloss black roof rails, privacy glass, adaptive surface response, memory functions, 4-zone climate control. So that all adds approximately $14,000. Let me see this. I gotta see if this thing is actually cooled. It must be. I wonder if they use the air conditioning to do that. Pretty cool. Now, I do like this feature. It's kind of like a heartbeat. When you get in the vehicle, you've got this blinking red light. It shows you where the start button is. We have 2 cup holders, which is nice. We have a USB-C and a USB port, plus the old school. I've been to the gas station, so I have the cheap plug-in phone charger. We do have drive modes right there, and those include, you can show that, dynamic, comfort, eco, and then those are kind of the off-road modes, which is actually pretty cool. So we're not going to go off-roading, so I'm not going to mess with that. I do like this thick steering wheel. I'm not such a big fan of these kind of hidden controls, where you don't have a physical button. But both Land Rover and Jaguar do this, which is kind of interesting, and that is you've got this multi-function rotary dial here, which in its basic form serves as the temperature gauge, but then if you pull it out, you control the fan speed. So you push that, and if you push it in, you control either the heated going right or cooled going the other way seats. So in fact, there are 3 functions that are part of this control, and that can be rather confusing for some people. I know my mom would really struggle with that, but once you get used to them, it's not bad. We're still in the process of course, reinventing the volume control and the shift knob. So we have a rather beefy shift knob that you have to push to put in reverse, pull to put in drive, and then push to put in park. Good cameras. I love the Land Rover S kind of cameras, where I just lost them. Where are my cameras? I'm gonna have to go find them. Here they are, cameras. So let's look at this one, for instance. And I love the fact that you should be able to like spin the car around to be able to zoom in and zoom out. It's almost a cinematic effect. It's really cool that you can do that. Look at that. How do they do that? It's just movie magic. And this screen is a little bit bigger. That's been updated as well. And the system over time has actually gotten better. I've used JLR systems for quite a number of years, and every generation gets a little bit better. I would like to see a little bit more color in this. It feels kind of minimalist in some ways, but also kind of just low rent in some others. So it's kind of this weird mixture of like being minimalist, but at the same time not feeling exactly expensive. And all surface information. This is kind of cool. It tells you where power is being allocated, how much of that is actually getting to the ground. Pretty cool stuff. Like I said, my biggest complaint with the system, and we had the same system in our Defender, is, for instance, I like to keep it in the radio, or in this case Sirius XM mode. But let me show you something. So if I want to like change stations, I can do this. But here's what happens: open the door, turns off, and then turn it back on. And it's fixed itself. It used to be that it would go back to the home screen, but this time it hasn't. That may be because we didn't actually fully cycle it, but that was always my biggest complaint, that it didn't stay in the menu that you left it in. But this time it proved me wrong, so I'm very happy about that. All right, well, let's go for a ride. Let's see what 335 horsepower feels like. A lot of the stuff in here is kind of this interesting mixture of old and new. I find that sometimes Jaguar can pull that off, and sometimes they can't pull it off. I think in this case, you know, they have pulled it off for the most part. So what I'm talking about are very traditional leather, and in this case metals, mixed with kind of this dual tone steering wheel, paddle shifters, and that feels all very modern. But then there's also kind of this stateliness to it that is maybe represented by these big, is that chrome or is that plastic, hard to tell, accents on the steering wheel. And it's, like I said, it's this kind of weird mixture of both that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. You know, if you get into, let's say, a Tesla, it'll be very minimalist and it'll feel very modern. At least it did when I first got into a Tesla. Or if you get into now a BMW, it will feel very engineering inspired. So there'll be a lot of bits and pieces that won't be tactile, but will be very cold, giving it kind of more of a futuristic bend. Like I said, this is kind of a mixture of both. All right, well, let's get on the road here and give it a little bit of the beans, see how quickly this car accelerates. So it's floored, revs to 6,000, and I will be quickly exceeding the speed limit, but it's doing well. And I'm actually surprised by the quality of this ride. I was ready to actually talk about how firm it is, but you know what? It's not too bad. It's really surprising that the engineers can take all that sidewall, or the lack thereof, and then work a suspension that doesn't feel like it's going to beat you up on a typical drive across country. So yeah, not bad. And that road isn't exactly plush. So I have to commend Jaguar. The magic that Jaguar has always had in my mind is they've been able to do something that's very hard, and that is combine a vehicle that is almost, dare I say it, cutting edge in terms of its performance, its ability to carve corners, its ability to give you a lot of road feel, and at the same time make it plush and comfortable to drive, because those are two things that are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Usually when you want to make a vehicle perform in its driving dynamics, you have to give it a harsh ride. I just got out of the Porsche GT4 RS, and I was on the track with that car, and it's razor sharp, but oh my, when you take it on the road, you know that this is a track car. And Jaguar somehow is able to combine those two into one vehicle where it's very well suited for road use, but it wouldn't feel out of place on the track. And I think that magic is still in the Jaguar DNA, which is one of the things I've always loved about Jaguars. Now, let's talk about, you know, why Jaguar is having a hard time selling cars in America. And maybe that goes to this question of, like, what is it about this car that is lust-worthy, or what is it about this car that is cutting edge? Now, you could argue that a supercharged and turbocharged power plant is certainly something that's cutting edge. You know, Volvo also has a version of it, or at least used to have a version of it. and we were always worried about the fact that that was a 2-liter and how much actual longevity an engine that has that much technology has. So it's not really all that cutting edge, and they're not the first to do it. This is a mild hybrid. Of course, mild hybrids have been around a long time. It isn't electrified. Well, I shouldn't say that. It is electrified, but it isn't hybridized. So to me, this would have been cutting edge 10 years ago, but I'm not sure it's cutting edge today. Same thing with like this infotainment, same thing with this kind of adjustable screen. I believe when I first saw this in a Range Rover, I felt like it was really cutting edge when you could actually take and you can change the way that the dials look. So for instance, if I put it into dynamic mode, let me swip it out of eco mode, let me go into dynamic mode, those gauges should turn red. There you go. Pretty cool, but you know, a lot of other cars do that as well. So once again, nothing cutting edge there. And the styling has started to get a little bit staid. I remember when this first came out, I drove it up in the mountains because they did the launch program here in America, and I thought to myself, wow, that's a really interesting way of making a crossover look sporty. But now after a few years, it's starting to get a little dated. And I think that's where it starts to show, right? When you're a company that is like Mercedes, and you seem to change your design language, or even BMW, around every couple of years, then that starts to feel very modern and very new. But when you're a company like Jaguar, and you know, you've had the same design language now for a number of years, it starts to feel very kind of old and very non-exciting. So let me kind of sum this up. Let me grab a car, and I'll kind of put it in the best way that I know how. So park, stop. And that is to say that I like the car. I think the car has a lot to offer. I think it's certainly in that sweet spot of where the automotive world is right now, but for me, there's nothing that's really lust-worthy behind this car. Maybe if you got the hotter version of this, which I drove, I think about 4, 5, 6 months ago, and really had a lot of fun in the canyons in California. But with I hate to say just 335 horsepower and kind of a modern-ish crossover, there's just nothing that tugs at my heartstrings and makes me want to say, I need this car. And that doesn't mean that, you know, it can't be that, but right now, if I were looking at a JLR product, I would certainly look at a Range Rover first, or the new upcoming Range Rover Sport, or even a Defender, before I would look at the F-Pace. So there you have it. As always, this is Roman reporting for the Fast Lane Car. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Remember, go to alltfl.com for all of our news, views, and reviews. Ciao.